The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with laughter. It echoed off the crystal walls and rang through the air like thunder. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their curved seats, their strange bodies shaking with amusement. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had skin that changed colors with their mood. But in this moment, they all shared the same emotion. They were laughing at the newest discovery in the galaxy. They were laughing at humanity. High Overseer Vorn stood at the center of the hall. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that glowed soft blue. He had led the assembly for 200 years, and he had seen many species rise and fall. But he had never seen anything quite like creatures on the screen behind him. As you can see, Vorn said, his voice carrying easily through the hall, the species calls itself human. They come from a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. They have achieved basic space travel, but nothing impressive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are primitive. And their bodies. He paused, and a new wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. Their bodies are perhaps the weakest we have ever documented. Ambassador Null stepped forward. He had been the one to make first contact with Earth, and he was eager to share his findings. His forearms gestured at the screen as images of humans appeared. They were small creatures with soft skin and no natural armor. They had no claws, no fangs, no poison glands. Their eyes could not see in the dark. Their ears could not hear across great distances. By every measure the galaxy used, they were unremarkable. They have no psychic abilities, Null reported. They cannot communicate through thought. They cannot sense danger before it arrives. They are, in every way, ordinary. Commander Dren of the Torak Empire leaned forward in his seat. He was a massive creature, covered in thick plates of natural armor. His people were warriors, and they had conquered dozens of worlds. He looked at the images of humans with open disgust. They might make adequate servants, he said. Their hands seemed nimble enough. Perhaps they could clean our ships. More laughter. Even Vorn allowed himself a small smile. On Earth, General Taiho Park watched the broadcast with cold eyes. The Galactic Assembly had been kind enough to share their assessment of humanity with the people of Earth. They probably thought it was a gesture of openness. Taiho saw it for what it really was. It was an insult delivered with a smile. He stood in the greeting hall of the United Earth Government building, surrounded by alien diplomats and human officials. Ambassador Null had returned to Earth to deliver the Assembly's decision in person. Humanity would be granted observer status. They could watch the Assembly's meetings, but they could not vote. They could not propose laws. They could not request aid. They were, in the Assembly's eyes, too weak to matter. "We are honored by your consideration," said the human diplomat standing beside Taiho. His voice was smooth and professional. His smile was perfect. But Taiho could see the tension in his shoulders, the anger hiding behind his eyes. "Yes, yes," Null said, waving one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Your species is young. Perhaps in a few thousand years, you will develop enough to be considered for full membership. Until then, enjoy your observer status." Captain Una Beak stood near the door, wearing the black uniform of Earth's Special Forces. Her job today was simple. Stand guard. Look professional. Say nothing. But her ears caught everything. She heard Null turn to one of his aides and speak in his native language. The alien did not know that human translators had been working on his language for months. He did not know that Una understood every word. "Look at their soldiers," Null said quietly. "So small, so fragile. I have seen their history. They spend most of their time killing each other. Perhaps they will solve our problem for us and simply destroy themselves." His aide laughed. A soft, cruel sound, Yuna's face showed nothing. Her eyes remained forward. Her hands stayed relaxed at her sides. But deep inside, something cold and hard began to form. She would remember this moment. She would remember this laughter. That night, after the aliens had returned to their ship and the diplomats had gone home, General Tayo sat alone in his office. The lights were dim. The only sound was the soft hum of the computer on his desk. He pulled up a file that very few people knew existed. It was called Protocol Omega. It was humanity's contingency plan for hostile first contact. For centuries, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Some had hoped to find friends among the stars. Others had feared finding enemies. The wise ones had prepared for both. Protocol Omega contained everything. Ship designs that had never been built. Weapons that had never been tested. Training programs for soldiers who did not yet exist. It was humanity's insurance policy, created by generations of military minds who understood one simple truth. The universe was vast and old, and anything that had survived out there had learned to be dangerous. Taiheo did not activate the protocol. Not yet. The aliens were arrogant and rude, but they were not hostile. There was no reason to prepare for war, but he did not close the file either. He left it open on his screen, its contents glowing softly in the darkness. And he made a decision. He would watch. He would wait. And if the galaxy ever gave him a reason, he would show them exactly what humanity was capable of far above Earth. Ambassador Null's ship prepared to leave the solar system. He filed his final report on humanity with a sense of satisfaction. Another primitive species documented. Another footnote in galactic history. He did not notice the small human satellites tracking his ship as it left. He did not know that human scientists were already analyzing the energy signature of his engines. He did not realize that every word he had spoken on Earth had been recorded, translated, and filed away. The galaxy thought humanity was a joke. They had no idea that the joke was about to turn very serious. 6 months passed after humanity received its observer status. 6 months of quiet insults and casual disrespect. The Galactic Assembly continued to treat humans like amusing pets, interesting to study, but not worth taking seriously. And then the Torak Empire decided to take what they wanted. New. Bizon was a small colony on a world called Kepler 442b. It was a beautiful planet with green forests and blue oceans. Far from Earth, but full of hope. 10,000 humans lived there. Scientists studying the local plants. Engineers building new homes. Families who had traveled across the stars to start fresh lives. They had no idea that the Torak Empire considered their world to be unclaimed territory. The Torak fleet arrived without warning. 15 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the planet. General Mal commanded the fleet from his flagship. He was old for a Torak, his armor plates scarred from decades of conquest. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never lost a battle, and he certainly did not expect any trouble from a species that the Assembly had called weak. Admiral Hana Shin received the alert on her small defense ship. She commanded a fleet of 6 vessels, barely enough to patrol the colony's space. When she saw the Torak Armada on her screens, her heart sank. But her voice remained steady as she opened communications. Torak Fleet, this is Admiral Hana Shin of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space. Please state your intentions. General Mal's face appeared on her screen. He did not bother to hide his contempt. Human space? He said, there is no such thing. The Assembly has not recognized your claim to this world. Therefore, it belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it. You will evacuate your people within 12 hours. After that, anyone remaining will be removed. Hannah kept her expression calm. General, there are 10,000 civilians on that planet. Families, Children, we need more time to evacuate safely. Mal laughed. It was a harsh, grinding sound. 12 hours is generous. I would suggest you stop talking and start moving. He ended the communication. Hana immediately sent a message to Earth. She described the situation in clear, simple terms. 15 enemy ships. 6 defenders. 12 hours to evacuate 10,000 people. It was impossible, but she would try. The evacuation began. Transport ships landed at every settlement. Families grabbed what they could carry. Children cried as parents rushed them toward the ships. The colonists of New Bizen had come here seeking peace. Now they fled in terror. Lieutenant Minho Kwan watched from the bridge of his patrol ship. He was young, only 25 years old, and this was his first real assignment. He had trained for combat, but nothing had prepared him for this. The fear in the colonists' voices as they boarded transports. The desperation in their eyes. "Admiral," he said, "the transports are launching. But we need at least 16 hours to get everyone out." Hannah nodded. "I know. Keep the evacuation moving. I will try to negotiate more time." She opened communications with General Mal again. She offered trades, concessions, anything to buy more hours. Mal listened with growing impatience. "Your begging is tiresome," he finally said. "You speak as if we are equals. We are not. You are pets, and pets do not negotiate with their masters." He ended the communication again. This time, he gave an order. The first Torak ship opened fire on a civilian transport. The vessel was called the Morning Star, and it carried 400 colonists, families, children, researchers who had spent their lives studying the stars. The Torak weapons hit it without warning, and the Morning Star became a ball of fire against the darkness of space. Then the second ship fired. Then the third. Minho watched his screens in horror. 7 transports destroyed in less than a minute. His console showed the numbers, cold and precise. 800 dead. 1,000. 1,500. "They're firing on civilians," he said, his voice breaking. "They're killing everyone." Hana's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Record everything. Transmit everything back to Earth. The galaxy needs to see what is happening here." Minho did as he was told. His fingers shook as he worked, but he did not stop. He captured every moment of the massacre, every explosion, every desperate call for help that went unanswered. When it was over, 2,847 people were dead. The Torak fleet did not land on the planet or claim the colony. They simply left. The attack had not been about territory. It had been about sending a message. Humanity was nothing. Humanity did not matter. And if humans ever forgot that, the Torak would be happy to remind them. 20-4 hours later, General Teho Park stood before the United Earth Council. The chamber was silent. Every seat was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth. Their faces were grim. Their eyes were fixed on the screens behind Tai-Ho. He played the footage without comment. The transports exploding. The final messages from the dying. A child's voice calling for her mother, cut off mid-word. When the footage ended, Tai-He let the silence hang in the air. Then he spoke. "The Galactic Assembly told us we were weak. The Torak Empire told us we were pets. They laughed at our soldiers. They mocked our technology. They believed we would accept any insult, any cruelty, because we were too primitive to fight back." He paused. His eyes swept across the chamber. They were wrong. He pressed a button on his console. A document appeared on every screen in the chamber. It was short and simple. Humanity formally declares war on the Torak Empire. No one objected. No one asked for discussion or debate. Every representative raised their hand in agreement. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the declaration reached the Galactic Assembly. High Overseer Vorn read it with amusement. A species with 6 warships declaring war on an empire with thousands? It was absurd. It was laughable. He called it adorable. But far away, on Earth, factories that had been sleeping for decades began to wake. Engineers pulled out designs that had been waiting in storage. Soldiers who had been training in secret received new orders. Protocol Omega was now active. The galaxy had made humanity angry. Now humanity was going to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. 3 months into the war, the Torok Empire sent 200 warships to end the conflict. They called it a disciplinary fleet, as if humanity were a misbehaving child that needed correction. General Mal assured the Galactic Assembly that the war would be over within a week. He was wrong. Captain. Una Beak received her orders on a cold morning aboard the Stealth. Shipped Silent Blade. Her unit was called the Ghost Unit. 43 soldiers trained in the deadliest arts of human warfare: infiltration, sabotage, assassination. The things humanity had learned from centuries of fighting itself. Her orders were simple. Stop the Torak fleet before it reached Earth. 200 ships, said Lieutenant Minnow, who had been reassigned to her unit after surviving New Bizin. 43 of us. How exactly are we supposed to stop them? Una smiled. It was not a kind smile. We don't have to destroy them all. We just have to make them afraid. The Torak fleet traveled in perfect formation. Their ships were massive and powerful, bristling with weapons. Their crews were disciplined and experienced. They expected to sweep aside whatever pathetic defense humanity could muster. They did not expect the darkness to attack them. The Ghost Unit's ships were small and nearly invisible. They slipped through the Torak formation like shadows, attaching devices to hulls and cutting through airlocks. Una led the first team onto the flagship itself, moving through corridors that had never known an intruder. The Torak found the first bodies an hour later. 3 officers, killed silently at their posts. Their weapons had never left their holsters. There were no signs of forced entry. It was as if ghosts had walked through the walls and taken their lives. Then the system started failing. Navigation went dark. Communications scrambled. Weapons locked in their housings. The Torak engineers worked frantically to find the problem. But every time they fixed one system, another failed. General Mal screamed orders from his command chair. Find them. They are only humans. They are weak. But his crew could not find what they could not see. And by the time they realized the truth, it was too late. Una's team had planted charges throughout the flagship's engine core. When they detonated, the ship lurched violently off course. Its navigation system, damaged beyond repair, calculated a jump that would take it directly into the nearest star. All ships emergency jump. Mal ordered. Half the fleet obeyed. Half of those ships jumped into the star alongside the flagship. The others scattered across the galaxy, their navigation systems corrupted by human viruses. In one night, the Ghost Unit had reduced the disciplinary fleet by half, and they had done it without losing a single soldier. On the ground, Sergeant Wubin Shah faced a different kind of battle. The Torak had landed troops on the contested moon of Vega 7, expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found something from their worst nightmares. Wubin was 50 years old, his body scarred from a lifetime of service. He had fought in wars on Earth, in peacekeeping missions on Mars, in the endless training exercises that had prepared humanity for this moment. He knew exactly how to break an enemy. The Torak fought with honor. They formed battle lines. They announced their attacks. They expected their enemies to do the same. Wu Bin did not fight with honor. He fought to win. His soldiers struck at night, when Torak eyes struggled to see. They attacked from tunnels dug beneath enemy camps. They used traps that the Torak had never imagined, devices that turned the ground into quicksand and the air into poison. They did not sleep. They did not rest. They simply kept coming. One Torak officer tried to surrender after his entire unit was destroyed. Wubin accepted his surrender and treated him with respect. Then he released the officer and let him return to his people. "Tell them what you saw here," Wubin said. "Tell them what happens when you attack our homes." The officer told them. Word spread through the Torak ranks. The humans were not weak. The humans were monsters wearing soft skin. But the greatest shock came when Earth revealed its true strength. For years, humanity had built in secret. Factories hidden underground. Shipyards floating in the asteroid belt. Research stations buried beneath the ice of distant moons. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's 6 warships, never knowing that those 6 ships were just the ones they were allowed to see. Admiral Hana Shin commanded the Aegis fleet when it emerged from hiding. 600 warships, each one designed with a single purpose. War. Pure, efficient, devastating war. The Torak Defense Station at Relay 7 was one of the most heavily fortified positions in their empire. It had never fallen to an enemy. Hannah destroyed it in 3 hours. She did not fight fair. She used gravity wells to trap enemy ships. She launched asteroids as weapons. Ancient rocks accelerated to impossible speeds. She turned Torak communications against them, sending false orders that created chaos and confusion. When the battle ended, the Torak commander sent a desperate message to the Galactic Assembly. His voice shook with something the galaxy had never heard from a Torak warrior: fear. "They don't fight like civilized species," he reported. "They fight like they have nothing to lose. They smile before battle. They joke about death. There is something wrong with them." High Overseer Vorn received the message in his private chambers. He read it 3 times, and each time his blue eyes grew darker. "They were supposed to be weak," he said to Ambassador Null. "Your reports said they were weak." Null could not meet his eyes. "I reported what I observed, High Overseer. I saw a species that had no natural weapons, no psychic abilities, no special adaptations. By every measure we use, they should be weak. Then why are they winning?" Null had no answer. But Vorn was beginning to understand. The galaxy had measured humanity by the wrong standards. They had looked at human bodies and seen fragility. They had looked at human technology and seen primitiveness. They had looked at human history and seen chaos. They should have looked at human history and seen survival. A species that had endured ice ages and plagues and world wars. A species that had faced extinction a dozen times and refused to die. A species that had spent its entire existence fighting the most dangerous predator in its history. Itself. The Torak had awakened something ancient and terrible. Something that the humans themselves had tried to forget. The part of them that enjoyed the hunt. The part of them that never surrendered. The part of them that made them the most dangerous creatures on their death world. And now that part was awake, Vorn closed the message and stared at the stars outside his window. For the first time in 200 years, the High Overseer of the Galactic Assembly was afraid. "What have we done?" He whispered. No one answered. But across the galaxy, humanity's soldiers were already showing them exactly what they had done. 8 months after humanity declared war, the Galactic Assembly held an emergency meeting. It was the first emergency meeting in over a century. The last one had been called when a black hole threatened to destroy an entire sector. This time, the threat was far more terrifying. This time, the threat was human. High Overseer Vorn sat in his chair at the center of the great hall. His face was tired. His eyes had lost their confident glow. Around him, the representatives of 12 species whispered nervously to each other. The laughter that had once filled this chamber was gone. Ambassador Null stood before them, his 4 hands trembling as he presented his report. He had spent the last month studying humanity, really studying them this time. What he had found kept him awake at night. The Torak Empire is losing, he began. Not slowly, not gradually. They are being destroyed. In 8 months, humanity has taken 43 Torak systems. They have captured or destroyed over 1,000 warships. Their losses have been minimal. Commander Dren slammed his armored fist against his chair. That is impossible. The Torak are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. These humans are nothing but soft creatures with fragile bones. That is what we all believed, Null said quietly. We were wrong. He activated the display behind him. Images appeared. Battlefield recordings captured by Torak soldiers before they died. The representatives watched in silence as human soldiers moved through fire and smoke. They saw a human take a wound that would have killed any of them and keep fighting. They saw humans drag their injured friends to safety while enemies shot at them from all sides. They call it adrenaline, Null explained. When humans are afraid or angry, their bodies change. Their hearts beat faster. Their muscles grow stronger. Their minds become sharper. Pain becomes distant, almost unimportant. Other species freeze when they are terrified. Humans become more dangerous. General Mal's face appeared on the screen. He was recording a message from his prison cell, captured by human forces 3 weeks ago. His armor was cracked. His eyes were hollow. They don't stop, Mal said, his voice barely a whisper. We killed them by the hundreds, and they kept coming. We destroyed their ships, and they attacked in escape pods. We thought victory was certain, and they pulled out weapons we had never seen. They smile when they fight. They laugh when they die. There is something broken inside them, something that makes death meaningless. The recording ended. The hall was silent. Vorn leaned forward. What do your researchers say, Ambassador? What is wrong with them? Nothing is wrong with them, Null answered. This is what they are. This is what Earth made them. He showed them images of Earth, not the peaceful cities and quiet forests. The other parts, the deserts that could kill in hours, the oceans that hid predators in every shadow, the diseases that had wiped out millions, the ice ages that had frozen entire continents. Every species in this room evolved in relative safety, Null said. We developed on worlds that supported us. We grew in environments that allowed us to thrive. Humanity did not. Earth is what scientists call a death world. It tries to kill its inhabitants every day. Everything on that planet is either a predator, a poison, or a disaster waiting to happen. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humanity did not become dangerous because they are special. They became dangerous because they had no other choice. Survival on Earth requires aggression. It requires determination. It requires a willingness to do whatever is necessary to live another day. Commander Dren shook his head. If their world is so dangerous, how did they survive long enough to build civilization? Because they are the most dangerous thing on it, Null answered. They are what happens when a species spends millions of years learning to kill everything that tries to kill them. And now we have made them angry. General Teho Park chose that moment to send humanity's gift to the assembly. Every screen in the hall flickered. Human faces disappeared, replaced by footage from human history. Not the sanitized versions that Null had shown before. The real history. The full truth of what humanity had done to itself. The representatives watched battles that had shaped human civilization. They saw soldiers holding positions until the last man fell. They saw cities burning while defenders refused to retreat. They saw humans march through snow and starvation, through disease and despair, and emerge victorious on the other side. They saw Thermopylae, where 300 warriors held back an army of thousands. They saw Stalingrad, where humans fought street by street, building by building, until their enemies broke. They saw nameless soldiers carrying wounded friends through fire, knowing they would probably die, but refusing to leave anyone behind. When the footage ended, a message appeared on every screen. This is what we have always been. This is what you woke up. Remember this the next time you think we are weak. Vorn stared at the screen for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. They were never weak. They were restrained. Far from the assembly, Captain Una Beak was proving his words true. Her ghost unit had captured a Torak outpost on the edge of their empire. The station had surrendered after 3 days of siege. Now 200 Torak prisoners sat in the cargo bay, waiting to learn their fate. Una walked among them, her boots echoing on the metal floor. The Torak watched her with fear in their eyes. They expected torture, execution, the things they would have done to human prisoners. Instead, Una stopped at the center of the room and spoke. "You are free to go." The Torak stared at her in confusion. "I am giving you a message to carry home," she continued. "We do not want your empire. We do not want your worlds. We want the officers who ordered the attack on New Bizen. Give them to us, and this war ends. Refuse, and we will never stop. We will hunt your leaders across the galaxy. We will burn your military bases to ash. We will make sure that every Torak child knows the price of attacking human civilians." She paused. "We are not monsters. We know when to stop, but only if you give us a reason to." The prisoners were released. Most of them returned to Torak space with her message. Some refused to fight again, their spirits broken by what they had seen. Word spread through the Empire like a disease. The humans could have killed them. The humans had every reason to kill them. But the humans had shown mercy, and somehow that was more terrifying than any weapon. Lieutenant Mino found Una alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. He stood beside her in silence for a moment. "Why did you let them go?" he asked. Una did not look at him. "Because we are human, Mino. We know how to fight. But we also know how to forgive. That is what makes us different from them." "Different how?" She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but calm. "They fight because they want power. We fight because we have no other choice. And when the fighting is over, we want to go home and live in peace. That is the part they do not understand. That is the part that scares them most." Minho nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that the galaxy had laughed at humanity. The galaxy had attacked humanity. And now the galaxy was learning that humanity was something they had never encountered before. A species that could be both merciful and merciless. A species that could forgive its enemies or hunt them to the ends of the universe. A species that chose peace when peace was possible and war when war was necessary. And right now, war was very, very necessary. 1 year after humanity declared war, the Torak Empire surrendered. It was not the complete conquest that some humans had wanted. The Torak homeworld still stood. Their civilization still existed. But their military was shattered, their economy ruined, and their people lived in constant fear. They had started a war expecting easy victory. They had found something else entirely. General Mao was brought before human authorities in chains. He was not alone. 17 officers who had ordered the attack on New Bizen stood beside him, their armor removed, their eyes empty. They had expected to be executed immediately. The humans had other plans. General Tejo Park personally oversaw the tribunal. It was held in a grand hall on Earth, broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched. The Galactic Assembly watched. The Torak watched. And humanity showed them all something they had never expected. Justice, Each prisoner received a fair trial. Lawyers presented evidence. Witnesses testified. The accused were allowed to speak in their own defense. Taiho sat as the chief judge, his face calm and expressionless as he listened to every word. "This is a waste of time," Commander Dren complained to High Overseer Vorn as they watched the broadcast. "They should simply kill them and be done with it." "That is what we would do." Vorn shook his head slowly. "Watch, learn. This is why they are more dangerous than we ever imagined." The verdicts came one by one. Guilty, guilty. Every officer who had ordered the massacre was found responsible for their crimes. General Mao was the last to hear his fate. He stood before Taiho, waiting for the death sentence he was certain would come. He had killed almost 3,000 human civilians. There was no possible punishment except death. "General Mao," Taiho said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent hall, "you have been found guilty of war crimes against humanity. You ordered the destruction of civilian transports. You killed innocents who posed no threat to your forces. You did this not for military necessity, but to send a message." Mao said nothing. He simply waited. "The sentence is life imprisonment. You will spend the remainder of your days in a facility on Asteroid Facility at the edge of human space. You will have food and shelter. You will have medical care. You will live." Mao stared at him in shock. "You are not going to kill me?" Admiral Hanashin stepped forward. She had been waiting for this moment. "Death is easy, General. Death is quick. We want you to live. We want you to grow old in that prison. We want you to think about what you did every single day for the rest of your existence. We want you to understand, slowly and completely, that you murdered nearly 3,000 people because you thought we were too weak to fight back." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that the microphone still carried across the galaxy. "We want you to know that you were wrong." Mao was taken away. The other officers received similar sentences. No executions, no torture, just decades of imprisonment and reflection. The galaxy watched in confused silence. High Overseer Vorn requested a formal meeting with General Taiho. 3 days later, they faced each other in the same hall where humans had once been mocked as pets. "On behalf of the Galactic Assembly," Vorn said, his voice formal and careful, "I offer humanity full membership. You have proven yourselves worthy of standing among us as equals. The Council votes unanimously to welcome you." Taiho studied the High Overseer for a long moment. His face revealed nothing. "No." Vorn blinked his glowing eyes in surprise. "I do not understand." "It is simple," Taiho said. 1 year ago, your assembly laughed while our children burned. You called us pets while our people screamed. You had the power to stop the Torak attack. You had the authority to demand they stand down. You did nothing." He stood, his presence suddenly filling the room despite his ordinary human size. "We do not want your membership, High Overseer. We will build our own alliance with the species you have overlooked, the ones you mocked, the ones you dismissed as unimportant. They will be our partners, and together we will remember that when humanity needed help, the galaxy laughed." Vorn had no response. For the first time in his long life, he understood what it felt like to be dismissed. 5 years passed. The human coalition grew into something the galaxy had never seen. 30 systems united not by conquest, but by choice. 7 species had joined, all of them former outcasts that the Assembly had ignored. Together, they built trade routes and research stations and mutual defense agreements. Captain Unibeek became Admiral Unibeek, commander of the Coalition fleet. She was older now, her hair showing streaks of gray, but her eyes still held the same fire. Her ghost unit had been disbanded. There was no need for shadows when you could stand in the light. Sergeant Wu Bin Sha retired from active duty to train new soldiers. He taught them everything he knew about warfare, but he also taught them something more important. He taught them when to fight and when to show mercy. He taught them that strength meant nothing without wisdom. Lieutenant Minho Quan became a diplomat. He traveled between worlds, building bridges between species who had once been enemies. He found that humans had a gift for diplomacy. They could understand other perspectives because they had spent centuries learning to understand each other. Ambassador No requested a private meeting with General Taiho, now retired from military service. They met in a garden on Earth, surrounded by flowers that had evolved on a death world and learned to thrive. "I have come to apologize," Null said. His 4 hands were clasped together nervously. "What I said about your people, what I thought about your people, was wrong. I judged you by measures that did not apply. I dismissed you because I did not understand you." Taiho nodded slowly. "I accept your apology, Ambassador." Null looked relieved, but he had one more question. What would have happened if we had simply been kind? If we had treated you with respect from the beginning, instead of mockery? Taiho considered the question carefully before answering. Then you would have found the most loyal allies in the galaxy. Humans will die for those they love. We will cross any distance, fight any enemy, sacrifice anything for the people we care about. You could have had that loyalty, Ambassador. You could have had friends who would have stood beside you against any threat. He paused, his eyes distant. But you chose to laugh. You chose to mock. You chose to let the Torak kill our children while you did nothing. And so you lost something precious. Not because we are unforgiving, but because trust, once broken, takes generations to rebuild. Null absorbed this in silence. Then he asked one final question. Is there any hope? Can the Assembly and humanity ever be true allies? Taiho smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. There is always hope, Ambassador. That is perhaps the most human thing about us. No matter how dark things become, we always believe tomorrow can be better. Give us time. Show us that you have changed. And perhaps one day, your grandchildren and our grandchildren will stand together as friends. On New Bizen, rebuilt and thriving, a memorial stood at the center of the capital city. It listed every name of every person who had died in the massacre. 2,847 names carved in stone. Every year, on the anniversary of the attack, humans across the galaxy paused for 1 minute of silence. Not just on New Bizen, on Earth, on every colony, every station, every ship flying through the darkness between stars. They did not pause to mourn, though mourning was part of it. They paused to remember, to remind themselves and the universe that some things should never be forgotten. Some debts should never go unpaid. Some lessons should never need to be taught twice. Admiral Unibeek stood before the memorial as the minute of silence ended. Minho stood beside her, older now, with a family of his own. "Do you think they will ever understand us?" He asked .YUNA, watched as flowers were laid at the base of the memorial. Children played nearby, their laughter mixing with the gentle wind. "Perhaps," she said. "Perhaps not. But it does not matter. We do not live for their understanding. We live for each other, for our families, for our future." She turned away from the memorial and looked up at the stars. The galaxy no longer laughs at humanity. The galaxy remembers why. Minho nodded. He understood now, after all these years. Humanity had not won because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced. They had won because they were human, because they had learned through millennia of struggle that the only way to survive was together, because they knew that kindness and cruelty, mercy and wrath could exist in the same heart dot The universe was vast and old and full of wonders. Humanity was just one species among thousands, a single thread in an endless tapestry. But that thread was made of something special, something forged in fire and tempered by time, something that would never break, no matter how hard the universe tried not. And somewhere, in the darkness between stars, the galaxy was finally beginning to understand. Humanity was not a joke. Humanity was a warning, and the warning had been received.